You're listening to the Nature Talks podcast, a podcast about education and connecting learners of all ages with the outdoors and nature. My name is Kevin O'Shea and I'm your host. I'm an early years educator with a passion for connecting kids and adults with the outdoors. I'm a passionate naturalist who spends as much time as I can exploring nature, learning about plants, birds, and bugs, and then sharing my amazing experiences with others. In each episode of the Nature Talks podcast, we'll have conversations with people making education connections with students and nature. More than any other time in history, we need to be sparking a passion for conservation and sustainability with the young and old alike. And in this podcast, we'll talk to educators, students, scientists, and citizens making a difference in the world today. Sit back and get ready to learn something new and exciting about nature education. Well, hey there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Nature Talks podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to stop by, and I hope that this week you get something out of the episode. Well, I hope you get something out of the episode each and every week. Now, in this episode, it's just me, Kevin, coming to you, talking about ways that you can connect your learners on campus, young learners, older learners, with the environment, with nature that you have around you. And what inspired me to talk about this topic this episode is basically an activity I've been doing with some grade 3 classes at my school. Now, I am not a grade 3 teacher. I am a kindergarten teacher. And unfortunately, because of COVID restrictions, where I'm living at the moment in the city of Shenzhen, China, kindergartens across the city were closed. Now, what that means is my grade level is the only grade level at our school that is online. So I'm doing a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous learning. But it does allow me to have some more flex time in my daily schedule to be able to work with other grade levels, older grade levels, who are on the ground. And currently the grade 3 classes at my school are working on their Sharing the Planet unit of inquiry. And for teachers who've worked in the International Baccalaureate or IB PYP framework in the past will know that there are several units of inquiry per year, normally 6 in a grade level like grade 3. And they always have one called Sharing the Planet. And that tends to be the unit of inquiry that is most connected to things like the environment, sustainability, biodiversity, nature, wildlife, all those kind of oriented things that are oriented with that. So this tends to be the unit of inquiry where students are out learning about wildlife, about growing things, growth cycles, all of these good things that kids should know about, and adults as well. Now, what I want to talk to you about today is a pretty simple way to get kids excited about their surroundings and to start learning about the wildlife that is on campus and documenting that wildlife. And hopefully creating some kind of spark in them that is going to excite them enough when they leave campus. They're going to want to share with their parents and with their brothers and sisters and grandparents and family members the exciting things that they've learned. And I know that yesterday I took 2 grade 3 classes on nature walks around campus, and I was their guide. And I bumped into a parent this afternoon after school who told me that her daughter was so excited that I took the time to show her class around campus yesterday, and she went home and she told her mom all about the bird's nests I showed them that were hidden inside of bushes, the fruit bats that were located in different palm trees on campus, the invasive species of snails around, and all these cool things that I showed them. Now, you might be saying, hey, Kevin, you're a naturalist. You are someone who knows a lot of things about this kind of thing. And that is true. I am a naturalist. I spend all of my, now an amateur one at that, but I am a naturalist. I do spend essentially all of my time learning about plants and trees and birds and animals and wildlife and where to find them, about their habitats, why they're here, how they exist, all of that stuff. But you don't have to be an expert on things, and you don't have to be super knowledgeable to start building that knowledge and making things exciting for kids. So this episode, I really want to look at birds, okay? So I want to focus on how you can connect kids and excite kids at your school, teach them about biodiversity, about ecology, about habitats, about sustainability, about all the good stuff that they need to know about through birds. Now, why are birds such a fantastic tool for connecting kids with the natural world? It's pretty simple. They're everywhere. Everywhere you go in the world, you will find birds. Anywhere a school is, and since there are no schools in Antarctica, anywhere there is a school, there will be birds. Now, the diversity of bird populations varies drastically depending on where you are. But no matter where you are, there are birds. So you always have a piece of wildlife that you can connect learners with. Now, I am Canadian, and I grew up in Eastern Canada, and I grew up with a pair of parents who were birders and very enthusiastic. As a child, I was not a birder by any means, but I did learn a lot about birds through osmosis, of having my mother yell to me, Kevin, come here, look at the feeder. Spending a lot of time being dragged into the kitchen to look out the kitchen window into our backyard feeders and seeing the different species of birds. My parents would travel around Nova Scotia, my home province, on weekends, on holidays, on long weekends to look at birds, and often dragging my brother and I with us. I appreciate it now. Maybe not at the time, but I think it was maybe just the way things were done. It was through a different lens. Now, fast forward as an educator, living in Japan, years later, I got really interested in birds. I don't know if I would call myself a birder. I don't know if I'm at that level. Maybe so. Sometimes I am, but I am interested in birds. I'm pretty good at birding by ear. Where I am now, I finally, after 2 years here on the ground, I'm pretty confident with a lot of species. I know what they are. But you don't have to be into birds like this. So when I lived in Beijing, I taught in Beijing for a couple of years. My family and I lived there. I know people will argue, people who are in China, people who are into nature will say that Beijing is a major fly-through area for migratory birds, and actually throughout the year with the number of documented species is one of the best capital cities in the world to live in if you're a birder. Well, I lived and worked downtown Beijing, and we didn't have a whole lot of diversity. There wasn't a lot of habitat around. There weren't a lot of trees or variety in trees. There weren't a lot of things for the birds to eat. The vegetation that was there was constantly sprayed with pesticides. They'd argue to reduce mosquito populations, but that would reduce all insect populations, which would reduce bird populations. But what we did have regularly were Chinese blackbirds. We had crested mynas. We had Eurasian magpies, which were everywhere. And I ran a few ASAs. We became like magpie experts. And they are fascinating birds. Incredibly intelligent animals. One of the most intelligent animals in the world. We had azure-winged magpies. We had Eurasian tree sparrows. Tree sparrows are arguably the grumpiest birds in the world. But there weren't many others. Fast forward, I move south to Shenzhen, China, a subtropical climate where I am now. And there's a whole bunch of cool birds, and I have no idea what they are. So how can you connect kids on your campus with birds? Well, my suggestion is to make a bird field guide for your campus. And I'll tell you how to do this. And I'm going to share photos on the Nature Talks podcast Facebook page. So make sure you go over there and join the group. It's not I shouldn't say it's a Nature Talks Facebook group. There will be links in the show notes to this. So you go look down below in the information of this podcast. You scroll down if you're listening to an Apple Podcast or an Anchor, and you'll see the links. And that Facebook page, or group, I should say, is a great resource for information and things about teaching kind of environmental education in schools. So what I would do, so for example, if you live in, say, Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, or you live in Melbourne, Australia, or you live in Cardiff, Wales, wherever it is you are living, hop onto Google and do a quick search for local bird lists. So if you're in Cardiff, you might type Cardiff, Wales, local bird list. And I guarantee that there are organizations, conservation organizations, birding organizations that have compiled lists and put them online that you can find easily. Okay? A lot of these lists come with pictures too, because they're aimed often at people who may not have a lot of experience with birds. So now what I want you to do is you're gonna save that list. Maybe it's a PDF form or something like that, or you're gonna copy it. You're gonna print it out so you have pictures of some of the local birds, the most common birds. So we're gonna look for common birds. Maybe you type in like common wild birds in Halifax, Nova Scotia, or common wild birds or common bird list in Osaka, Japan. All right. Once you have that list in your hand, you're going to kind of look at it, keep it on your desk in your classroom. And what I want you to do over the next week or two, start to notice the birds that are around your campus. Take a mental image of them when you see them and go back to your list. And then make a check by the ones you see. Notice the ones that you see every day. Notice the ones that you might see throughout the day. Notice the ones that are always around. Don't discount any birds. A bird like a rock dove, aka a pigeon, is an important species in your area, and kids are going to think they're cool if you frame it the right way. Because they are cool, man. Pigeons are awesome, awesome birds. I love them. I'm a huge advocate of pigeons, for pigeons. Now, once you have a collection of birds that you're seeing around campus, you will know that those are birds that the kids at your school are going to see around campus as well. So, once you find those birds, so this is going to be, a field guide that you're obviously not selling. When I say field guide, I'm talking like, a piece of A4 paper, double-sided with photos on it, that the kids can hold in their hand. Or a PDF that they can put on their classroom iPad and take outside. So then, make a little title, make a document using Pages or Word or something else. It doesn't have to be pretty at first. And it could be like the birds of Charles H. Hulse Public School in Ottawa, Ontario. I thought I was a student teacher there a long time ago. It could be the birds of Sheko International School, for example, like where I teach now. Or the birds of Kansai International Academy, where I used to teach at one time. And then, I know most of us are not photographers. We're not wildlife photographers. We're not nature photographers. So you don't need to capture pictures of these birds yourselves. Go to Google, type in the name of the bird, maybe type Wiki Commons afterwards, and you'll come up with some Creative Commons photos of the birds. Save them. Copy and paste them onto this piece of paper and write the name of the bird underneath it. That's all you need to do is write the name of the bird. Whether it is an American crow, a carrion crow, a jungle crow, whether it's a blue jay, a cardinal, whether it's a common kingfisher, whatever it may be. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Just think of the most common ones that you see. Okay? Put those on that paper. Print them off. If you've got some graphic skills, make it look pretty, make it look cool. That's your thing. You can always upgrade later as you learn more about the birds yourselves. Then, print that off. Blow it up into A3. Put it on your wall in your classroom. Put it on your whiteboard. Print off a few copies for your students. Make sure you have a digital copy, a PDF that can be sent out to your students and shared. Then, what are you going to do? Well, take some time during one of your days to project that up on the whiteboard and talk to the kids about the different birds like they can see on campus that they're probably not even aware of and they've never noticed. Find a few videos on YouTube of these birds. There's amazing videos of every bird you could possibly think of out there because there are people like me who love those animals and love the birds and want to share them with the world. And a great way to share and educate is to put things on YouTube. Choose a bird or two. Learn about them. Watch some little videos about them. Then, here's the exciting part. This is where the magic happens. Get those kids with their classroom iPads in that PDF or the piece of paper in their hand and go for a walk outside on your campus, your schoolyard. Walk around the schoolyard. What do they see? Sit down for a little while. What do they see? But remember, a really important thing to share with young learners in your class and old learners alike and other faculty members is that birds and most animals do not like noise. So they're going to have to be quiet. If they're noisy, things will fly away. Then it's time to go out and start to identify birds. And they are going to get excited. Oh, you have no idea. And I'm not joking. I've done this for years with a lot of different age groups, a lot of different kids from a lot of different countries. And it's always the same. The level of excitement is amazing. And it's going to be exciting for you as a teacher to watch that spark, that excitement, as they actually start to learn the names of these birds. And you can take this in so many different directions. Once the kids know a few things about birds, maybe they can learn about those birds. They can learn about which birds, are any of these birds at risk? Are they least at risk? What do these birds eat? Is there a way that you can help them with food? Are there any species that need help in a big way? Why are those birds there? Are those birds year-long residents? Are they migratory? Do they fly somewhere else in the wintertime? It's time to start learning and getting excited. Now, let's take it a few steps further. Here's what I did. I've upgraded my bird guide, and I went to a website called Xenocanto, which is a library of bird calls and sounds that citizen scientists gather and collect around the world. And I downloaded the sounds, some different bird calls, and I put those on SoundCloud and then created a QR code that was linked to the SoundCloud file. And I put that on my field guide as well. So there's a QR code beside the picture of the bird, and the kids can scan that and then listen to different examples of the bird's calls. Now that's, takes a bit more time, more effort to do that, but that's the direction you could take it in. Now, a really cool thing is to send these files home or send these papers home with the kids. Have the kids go home and show mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, dad and dad, mom and mom, and teach them about the local birds. And maybe on weekends they can go to a park and learn more. Get a pair of binoculars or two for your classroom. But you can really go places with this. And again, it's a really exciting way to get kids really hooked on nature. Yesterday when I did my nature walk, I brought the two different classes around, and I've got another one tomorrow and another one the day after that. And I had my birding guides under my arm. I had them laminated on A3 paper, and I know lamination's not always the best way to go, but I've only laminated one set, and it's one that I use, and I know I'll have it for years. I walked around and showed them other things, and those are for the other things I show them. I talked about different mollusks and bats and trees, and again, maybe you don't know anything about that stuff, but let's take it one step at a time. Those are for future episodes of the podcast when I'm doing my solo educator shows. Like I had mentioned in episode 2 of the podcast. Sometimes these episodes I will have special, incredible guests on them. Other times I'm just going to be sharing with you different experiences that I have as an educator, an environmental educator, and different education ideas that I have, and experiences that I have. Okay, so that is a simple way that you can go out there and make a birding field guide to your school, to your campus, to your area, and a way that you can teach your students about the local birds, the local biodiversity. And I tell you, again, I choose birds because they're everywhere and they're accessible. That's just the big thing. Simply, they're accessible to everyone. It doesn't matter if you are a student attending a wealthy private school in the mountains of Switzerland, or you go to a public school in downtown Toronto, Canada, or New York. You're going to find birds. If you're in New York, wow, Central Park's an incredible place for birding, but even just kind of on the busy urban streets, you're going to find pigeons and peregrine falcons and lots of other cool things. So that's it, guys, for this episode of the Nature Talks podcast. Again, my name's Kevin O'Shea. I'm an environmental educator based in Shenzhen, China. I'm from Canada. I've got connections around the world. So there we go. Remember, like I said earlier in this episode, please go over and join the Nature Talks Facebook group. I'm going to put resources there. I'll share some examples of the field guide that I made. You can get an idea of what it looks like, and then I can also give you more ideas and tips on how you can put something like this together yourself. Go there, of course. Follow me on Twitter at MadForMaple. I'm pretty active on Twitter, education Twitter, and I tweet other things about Japan. My wife is from Japan. My kids were born there. I've got a real affinity for the country in many ways, everything from the ramen to the temples and the scenery and the wildlife. I also, just post a lot of things about my gardening, a lot of the growing that I do with just at my home with students at school. I'm a beekeeper as well, so I share things about that. So go check that out. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram at Shizen Wildlife, SHIZEN Wildlife, Shizen Wildlife over on Instagram. All right, folks. Also remember to like this podcast, give it a rating wherever you listen to it. And of course, please leave a review. Well, a nice one, of course, wherever you listen to the podcast. And that's going to help us grow. All right. Well, that's it for another episode of the Nature Talks podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And thank you for taking the time to share this podcast with educator friends of yours around the world.